Muspah has been out over a year, and hardly anyone is killing this boss, probably because people finish getting essence for the saturated heart and the Venator bow within the first 500 KC, and post-unique completion consists of just pet hunting, although there is a decent amount of scaling supplies to be had along the way. It's not deemed worthwhile to kill this boss otherwise. But I would argue the reason this boss isn't seen as fun is partly the feeling that you need absolute best-in-slot gear to approach it, and even then it's unpredictable form changes, specials happening at random intervals, and those damned homing spikes are all off-putting mechanics even with the best of gear. On the surface, it definitely doesn't feel like the mid-game boss that it was advertised as. This unpredictability has led a lot of people to just range camp T-bow or bowfire the entire time. This basically solves any and all reactions needed to the boss changing forms or specials because you just keep shooting away. You don't care what form it is or what special it's doing. At most, you just change your overhead and kite the melee phase. This is a symptom of not understanding how Muspah works. I would argue it's a similar situation to your first 100 or so Zora KC, before you really learn the 4 rotations, when to switch gear, where to stand, and what's coming up next. After you put in the effort to memorize the rotations, you can anticipate Zora's next move and begin pre-switching into the right gear as you're moving to the next position. A similar strategy can be implemented once you learn a few of Muspah's underlying mechanics and do a small bit of math on the fly. I would highly recommend installing customizable XP drops with predicted hit enabled, as well as showing boss HP numbers and not just percentages. Knowing how much damage you're hitting as well as how much you need to hit to the next threshold or form change is important. In addition, any other plugin settings or tile markers that are relevant will be in the description. Leave a comment if you don't find the plugin information you're looking for and I'll add it. Starting with the form transitions between melee and range. Unfortunately, the wiki is incomplete or incorrect on this boss in a lot of places. As of recording, it says, Muspah will change forms after taking roughly 100 damage, but this is misleading. There's nothing rough about it. If Muspah is green in the range form, Muspah will change to brown, the melee form, after you deal 100 damage to it or more. Thrall damage does not affect this threshold. Conversely, if Muspah is brown, it will change to green after you deal 80 damage to it or more. Why Jagex decided to make them different? Good question. Next topic. They are the teleport, spikes, and smite phase. The wiki, again, is incomplete and says, will always have 2 special attacks lined up after a certain amount of health is depleted. What does this mean exactly? Well, the exact health percentages are 75% and 50%, which will make Muspah do the teleport or spikes depending on which phase it started the fight, and at 15% it will do the smite phase. In numbered terms, 75% is 637 health, 50% is 425, and 15% is 127. But there's a nuance here that isn't mentioned anywhere. It's not enough to bring Muspah below that threshold. You must then hit Muspah while it is at or below these numbers in order to trigger the specials. So, for example, you hit Muspah on 650 health down to 610, nothing will happen. But the next hit you land will trigger the special because Muspah received a hit while at or below 637 health. The wording is key. Next is how the specials interact with changing forms. Specials will always be prioritized over switching forms. So for example, if you're hitting Muspah while below 637 HP, and you hit big enough that it would also change forms, Muspah will do the special, and then after the special ends, it will change forms on the next hit. So now let's break down each special a bit to see if we can find better ways to handle them. If you didn't know, if Muspah starts green or range form, the specials will start with the teleports and then the spikes. If Muspah starts brown or melee form, the specials will be spikes and then teleports. For teleports, first a note on damage carryover. The hit that triggers the special will count towards changing forms. As mentioned prior, even if you dealt enough damage to change forms, Muspah will prioritize the specials over the form change, and so will not change until the next hit after special ends. Any damage that Muspah receives during the teleports doesn't count towards changing forms. When the teleports begin, make your way to this tile, the link is in the description. It is the safe spot from all shadow orbs, and with a max range weapon can hit Muspah in any of the spots it teleports. After teleports end, I run forward and over one tile. Usually a form change happens right after teleport ends, so this will end up dropping a spike near Muspah in an ideal spot for Smite phase, but more on that later. One final note about the teleport special: even though he can teleport while brown melee form, use range to attack during this phase. Verify yourself with Monster Examine, but for some reason, Jagex decided that regardless of form, during teleports it would be weak to range, similar to Smite phase, I guess. T-bow it out, it is worth the switch. The next special is Homing Spikes. Again, a quick note on damage carryover. The hit that triggers the spikes to start, as well as the next couple hits during its summoning the spikes, do count towards the form change. However, Muspah cannot change form until being hit after the room lightens again. Usually this is 2 attacks after initiating the spikes, if you're continuously attacking, so be on the lookout for a form change right after. Dealing with the spikes themselves has been a thorn in my side for a while. The best methods I've found to deal with these, aside from the obvious kite them across the room, are getting them hung up on immobile spikes or on the north side of the entrance alcove. While they have the ability to pathfind around spikes, they can get hung up when the chosen path flip-flops between 2 positions. One of my go-to alignments is to place a spike from a form change and then walk 1 tile west of it, while the homing spikes are coming in from the north of it. So long as they're all directly north of this spike, and or to its east, they will always get hung up on the north side of the spike, alternating moving east 1 tile and back, as I'm showing on screen now. I tend to ride the south wall to ensure any spikes coming directly east of the spike can't pathfind around the south side. If a spike is coming directly from the east, it can path south around the spike, so be aware. If you strategically place a spike in the middle of the room for Smite phase, and it's spread due to a form change, by standing on the west side of the northmost one, like shown, the spikes coming from the south will also get hung up on the stationary spike. These 3 examples are not exhaustive, and there are definitely more ways you can get homing spikes confused in their pathfinding, so feel free to experiment. Another thing about spikes is they're chosen randomly within range of Muspah, except for any spikes that are directly adjacent to you, including diagonal. So if you strategically place a spike near the middle and prep for Smite phase, try to be next to it when the homing spike special activates, or Muspah might randomly choose it, removing your safe spot much to your chagrin. Smite phase triggers when you hit Muspah while it is at or below 127 HP. I would recommend, if it's brown or melee form, to switch into your ranged weapon and cape and just hit the boss to trigger the special. The damage would get nulled anyway, and for some reason splashing magic doesn't count as an actual hit that would make the special happen. It's better just to guarantee a hit. Even a failed accuracy roll with a ranged weapon counts as a hit for these purposes. Smite skip. If you place a spike on the perimeter of Muspah for Smite phase and stand next to it, you can get 2 T-bow hits before Smite phase begins. Do not attempt with magic weapons, as their travel time is much longer, and the second hit will not land in time. If you deal damage equaling Muspah's remaining HP before it turns on the prayer shield, it will immediately disable the shield and be left with 1 HP remaining. That is the skip. While Smite skip helps your chances at getting the sub 130 GM time, it is not required, and simply a back-to-back Sapphire Bolt can easily achieve it as well. If you go for the skip and fail to deal enough damage, simply change over to Sapphire Bolts and continue attacking with Smite up. You can get 1 more shot in before Muspah resumes attacking. You will be shooting 2 ticks before it. Unfortunately, your attack will line up with Muspah's magic attacks, so keep an eye out for that. If you aren't going for the Smite skip, attack the first tick after the shield goes up. You will always be attacking 1 tick after Muspah does, and have plenty of time to pray flick mage in the event Muspah does a range attack. Alright, those are the underlying mechanics of Muspah. Now onto some general strategies I've been using going for this pet. The first, which may be obvious to some, but it has come up, use Arceus Spellbook for thralls. You don't need Ancients to freeze, just pray melee and step back during melee form when Muspah gets close. He does 0 damage to you if he was moving when he attacked you and had pray melee up. The best visual indicator I've found to learn the timing is to move 1 tick after the previous hit splat on you disappears. In addition to thralls, toss some soul runes into your pouch and cast Greater Corruption, the level 85 spell, when Muspah is beginning Smite phase. It will deal 12 free Smite damage over time. It's really handy for those stubborn smite phases when your Sapphire bolts just won't proc or your T-bow is noodling. It does increasing damage over time, starting with 2, 4, and then 6 smite damage for a total of 12, in addition to whatever you're outputting. And again, it's basically no effort to do, so use it. If you have the Gorok teleport from Duke for the Ring of Shadows, a ZCB, and a Light Bearer, I would highly recommend you Ruby spec the first melee phase you encounter. With a Light Bearer, you will have 75% spec again after a minute 15, usually when you're reaching smite phase anyway. The reason you want to skip melee phase is twofold. T-bow maxes 75, where Shadow only maxes 64, and it'll stay in range form for 100 damage instead of only 80 for melee, which means higher max hits overall and less potential DPS lost from switching or kiting. It's just better to keep it green as much as you can. And that's all I got. Thanks for watching and good luck out there.